Now, in this section, we'll briefly examine the commercial regulation implemented in ancient China. We'll look at some particular rules, but more importantly, we should understand the principles behind these rules. The modern commercial world is drastically different from the ancient times because of its complexity of the marketplace and so on. So this makes some of the rules seemingly irrelevant to us. Well, this is true to some extent, but all the principles still apply to our society today. And because the good principles are receiving less attention than they deserve, the fast development of the commercial world today has resulted in many social problems. So that's what makes it interesting and also relevant to re-examine the principles behind the commercial activities in the past glorious times. Now, in the chapter of Royal Regulation of the Book of Rights, we can find roughly 14 rules of the marketplace. Because of the relative simplicity of the market back then, the rules mainly focused on forbidding certain items to be traded. And these rules were motivated by mainly 4 reasons: to promote social order, to promote standardization, to prevent extravagance and dissipation, and lastly, to preserve natural resources. So let's have a look at this one by one. Social order. Now, social order is another word for social harmony and peace. If members of society are in a harmonious relationship with one another, there is social order. Now, because society is made up of human beings, right? So social rules must take into account of the mentality of human in order to achieve some kind of harmonious human interaction. So in this respect, commercial activity is very important, if not the most important, because it is all about human interaction. So, motivated by the improvement of social order in ancient China, people were not allowed to sell overly expensive items in the marketplace. Now, although this seems to contradict the concept of free market today, it does serve to prevent people from being overly indulged in the enjoyment of material life. If people are able to control themselves, then surely you can consume whatever you like, as long as you can afford it. However, there is this spillover effect, the spillover effect on other people, other members of the society who cannot afford it. So the philosophy is that if the consumption of overly expensive items become a norm, then social members would honor only the rich and try to do whatever they can to become rich. But if they are unable to make enough money through normal occupation, then it sort of brews a sentiment of jealousy and may trigger potential crime. So this way, people will gradually put ethics and self-control in the background. If we think about all the social problems these days, such as financial fraud, accounting manipulation, crimes in general, and think about what is causing these activities, to a large part, it is driven by the motivation of getting rich fast. And why would anybody want to risk their life and get rich fast? It's probably because they want to keep up with the Joneses. So there is a lot of thoughts behind this simple rule that forbids the trading of overly expensive items. It's not so simple as oppressing personal freedom, but for the greater good of the society. The next rule forbids trading of items that represent ranks and honor. So this includes certain types of robes and chariots. Now, we can draw upon what we've learned in Lecture 8 on the principle of consumption. There are certain consumptions that serve a function beyond basic survival and personal joy. It is to generate social respect and set an example of what is good. So let's take robe as an example, shall we? In the ancient times, people of different social classes are required to wear different robes that represent their positions. According to the system of Confucius, everybody has the freedom to improve their moral standard and becomes a member of higher class. Like I said, the class system is not a system of caste, but it is one of morality and ethics. Now, there are plenty of examples where common people rose to become great officials because of personal cultivation. So the consumption of robes is not to show off their position. Although we cannot rule out the possibility that wearing a better robe does give the person the privilege to feel superior, but the fundamental purpose is to encourage the rest of the society to see an example, to see a role model. If people are willing to join a higher class, then they will be motivated to cultivate themselves. Now, if everyone can, in contrast, if everybody can simply buy those robes from the market without actually earning it through personal cultivation, then we can imagine what kind of a society it becomes, right? And there will be, no order, no sense of pride, and no sense of honor, and no point for personal cultivation, because the money will have the final say. The next two items on the list are mainly for special occasions, and the rule is again to promote the holiness of the religious service. Now, because religious service is of educational purpose, it must be granted the highest privilege in order to raise people's attention. Again, it is all about the promotion of social order. The prohibition of trading weaponaries in the market needs no further explanation, I think. Now, the rules on standardization. So these are also quite self-explanatory. It is for the purpose of to raise product quality and prevent fraud. Very similar to the ISO system that we're using today. And if you look at the last one, the clothes with incorrect colors, it is related to the previous category. Because robes and clothes serve a function of identity and social position by the style and the color, then the color design must be accurate to carry out that function. Otherwise, it will result in chaos. Now, the next category is on preventing extravagance, and it explains the first rule in the first category. And because of the significant impact of consumption pattern on social order, the Book of Rights put it in an independent category. On preserving natural resources, the main idea is that resources should not be taken away from nature at inappropriate time. The consumption of natural resources has been well explained in Lecture 10, and in fact there are many detailed rules about preserving natural resources in the chapter of rural regulation in the Book of Rights. So we won't spend too much time on these two categories, but the important thing to know is that the commercial rule laid out in this chapter are motivated by the understanding of human nature. Specifically, it is about protecting the mind of peace and harmony. The human mind not only generates the material world that we live in, but is also passively affected by it. The rules are not for the sake of the rules, but to ensure that commercial activity offers economic function without triggering the negative moral impact, without negative externalities. And I think, despite the big difference in the marketplace between the ancient times and the modern world, this principle of commerce is something that we're lacking today. We don't really think about this, do we? We're focusing a lot on the market and trading volume itself, and GDP and financial measure, but largely ignoring the ethical impact.